Alrighty, chat. How's it going? I see a frost. Not a frost. I see a crimson. I saw the F and was like, frost. That's exactly the wrong element there. You are a flame, not a frost. I also see you there, Nightwolf. How are you doing today? 70 streams. Holy cow. Sorry. Sorry, 70 is a lot. Holy cow. Which means that yesterday was stream number 69, Nightwolf. Hey. Whew. You're doing good? Good to hear. Good to hear. Oh, I need to actually stop my music. There we go. Trails into Reverie. It is time for a movie night. So what I've decided, because there are a lot, well, not a lot, but there might be more than 2.5 hours worth of Daydreams here.
Interface.
Because I got 1, 2, 3, 4 regular Daydreams, plus this, plus another one that unlocks afterwards. I'm going to watch the 2 white stone Daydreams first, and then we'll go through these until I either finish them, or until it's like 12:30 and I have to go to bed. Yeah, well, I'm going to be watching more than just that, Crimson. I still want to stream for like a normal amount of time. These are but minute fragments of memories drifting in an endless ocean. Memories of what will be in the near future. Could they be shadows of tangled threads woven by Elysium? Or perhaps faded illusions that slipped through the cracks of time and space? Oh, welcome back from the ads. There are none who know the answer. None? No one? Not a single person knows the answers, chat. Oh. I get options here. Unconventional student or another Hot Springs Paradise. You know what? This one was at the top. Hot Springs gives me, I don't know what kind of hopes, but January, year 1208 of the Septine calendar. Between 2 great mountains at the tip of a Calvardan basin sits Longlai. The town is known for 2 things, being the eastern entrance to the Republic and its exceptional hot springs, much like Ymir, I guess. Through these enticing factors, does it continue to welcome tourists hailing from both home and abroad. Yet today it served guests quite unlike its many unseasoned visitors. These come from another renowned hot springs paradise, situated in the northern reaches of Erebonia. Yeah, that is definitely Reen and his family. It feels weird seeing them all wearing, like, very traditional Japanese attire here, chat. The depth of the flavor in the food here is just exquisite. Agreed. The Phoenix Wings food is certainly nothing to sneeze at, but I have my doubts that I have my doubts the chef could replicate the dishes in this unique in taste. The Bishan Inn's reputation continued to precede itself. That was, in fact, Teo and Lucia, not Reen and Elise talking. Whatever. Baron Teo and Lady Lucia Schwarzer were sampling the inn's culinary delights, spirits high and stomachs filling fast. You hate the Bishan. Their daughter, Elise, sat next to them, her spirit with a bit lower by comparison as her brows furrowed with concern. I'm sure its luxuries come with just an equally luxurious price tag. And there's 4 of us, so even 2 nights must have cost a small fortune. Upon realizing what she said, she shook her head. I didn't mean to damper the mood, but I know we have the money, but all my budgeting as student council president has made a terrible habit of me seeing the numbers and everything. Her older brother Reen couldn't help but let out a chuckle. Then the budget buster in you will like how much we saved. Because we're here not as paying customers. We were invited by the owners personally. They said they wanted to get to know us since we run similar establishments, so here we are. And we'll be inviting them to Ymir sooner than later, of course. Right, Dad? Oh, absolutely. Add this to the list of boons coming from other countries finally coming to terms with one another. The Republic is reveling in unheard of levels of prosperity, and the relations between our people are more active and festive than ever. I, for one, welcome any opportunity to further foster friendship. The Baron took another healthy sip of his baijiu before continuing. Friendship over fighting, I say. Such a shame that the world tends to overcomplicate that simple concept. Seeing her husband's glass was almost empty, Lucia filled it to the brim while adding her own thoughts. That's all the more reason why we need to make the most of this invitation and enjoy ourselves to the fullest. Their children nodded in agreement. And even that aside, there's no reason to spoil a family vacation when we so rarely have the time to take them. Oh, I read about some unusual sweet dishes worth trying here. Would you like to share some with me, Reen? In a bit. I'm thinking of taking another soak in the hot springs, so I might be in the mood for something sweet after. The food here's delicious, but as far as I'm concerned, the hot springs are the real star of the show. He sure does love his hot springs, chat. That's my boy right there. The ruling lord of the hot springs paradise would never let a good discussion about them pass him by. He was as fond of their quality and soothing effects as Reen, enthusiasm undeniably apparent from the warmth of his tone to the width of his smile. Their medicinal springs happen to be a favorite of mine. I can't help but be fascinated by them every time and time again. I can't believe it. Or I can believe it. I've always known about them, but here's the first place I've been able to feel the way they warm you right to the core. Think we could make one available at the Phoenix Wings? It'd be worth a try, but that comes with its own obstacles. For as many problems as Teo expressed in particular terms, Reen held just as many proposed solutions. The conversation grew more and more involved by the minute, leaving the ladies of the house to pleasedly bask in their glow and continue enjoying the meal before them. Hi, DJ! Yes, we are starting with this daydream. All 4 felt the same, that it had been too long since they could enjoy each other's company. But the wait had been well worth it. Yeah, I'm starting with the 2 that I know are going to be connected to Daybreak, at least more so. And then the rest of my time, I'll do the rest of them. Or however many I can fit before it's time to go to bed. Whichever comes first. That night, after indulging in his post-dinner soak in the springs and telling his family he was going for a walk, Reen departed the inn. All right, let's do this. He took a deep breath, the crisp night air of Longlai filling his lungs. The hot springs were an excellent bonus to his trip, to be sure, but it was not the real reason he agreed to visit. He had come in search of young Cafe, the famed sword hermit. Beyond the Reverie is pretty long. It took you like 3 hours. Oh boy, this will be fun. Master Cafe was the founder of the 8 Leaves One Blade School, of which Reen was a practitioner. And though now over 70 years old, was still regarded as one of the strong combatants on the continent. They had not met since before Reen's enrollment at Thor's. Many a letter was exchanged during the 4 years that followed, but even they had stopped after Reen earned the right to call himself a Divine Blade over a year ago. There was so very much he wished to discuss with his master. What he had learned in his 4 years of training, what had transpired since becoming a Divine Blade, the true meaning behind the final blade to master the 8 leaves. There's plenty I'd like to ask that have nothing to do with swordsmanship, too. All these questions, all but impossible to answer, without first knowing the whereabouts of a single individual. Even a senior practitioner like Cassius Bright claimed ignorance, having received not a single update from their old master. He had always been an elusive but traceable sort, but wherever he was now was next to impossible to track. That was until word of a blade master being sighted in Long Lai reached Reen's ears. The man held a fondness for the town's specialities, those being the hot springs and its fragrant tea leaves, making the sighting worthy of particular note. He also knew from his letters before they stopped that he intended to journey eastward, making Long Lai one of the more plausible stopping points. The word came to him just as the Schwarzers were invited to stay at the inn during their New Year vacation. Reen's instincts told him that the timing was a little too fortunate. But with how vague the lead was, even it would most likely result in him leaving the same as he had arrived. While he had not discussed the rumor being key to his traveling here, his family seemed to sense it was more than a simple pleasure trip for him. Can't wait for part 32 tomorrow. Oh, honestly, if I don't finish absolutely all of the Daydreams today, I'm just going to go ahead and do the rest of them off screen, and we're still starting Daybreak tomorrow. That's my plan. I know Dad would have a great time coming up with him, but I don't want to get his hopes up for nothing. With these thoughts in mind, Reen made his way through the night streets. Long Lai's architecture was distinctly Eastern, making it a uniquely intriguing sight among most of Calvard's towns and cities. This was not to say it was similar to Crossbell's East Street. With subtle colors paired with dignified beauty, every wall and stone exuded the traditional concepts of wabi-sabi. One look was enough to understand the region was rich with history. This quiet charm would give way to contrastly likely events, where tourists both westward and further eastward were greeted to stalls dedicated to the hot springs and more. This, too, held a traditional sort of charm. Reen asked several merchants if they had any information pertaining to the whereabouts of his master, somewhat sheepishly purchasing a number of souvenirs from their stalls to keep himself from being a nuisance. They, he justified, would make excellent gifts for his friends, his co-workers, and his students. I'm sorry, DJ, I do need to move on eventually, though. I can't believe it's almost time for them to graduate. I might be more emotional about theirs than I was for mine. For the first time, Reen would get to experience what it was like for the young birds he had taken under his wing for 2 years to finally leave the nest. Their first year had been eventful, to say the least. What had started as a problem class full of disagreements and mounting tension had slowly grown into one of compassion and understanding for one another. It was with each new discovery about themselves and every new ordeal the world sought to impose upon them, that they grew not only as individuals but as a team. He had hoped this period would remain as much a meaningful part of their lives as it would always be for him. The months before the Retributive Tower's appearance held many a trial, making the 10 months that followed in its shadow pass all too quickly. In that time, Reen's students continued to mature, building on everything they accomplished in their first year, to prepare for and settle into the desired future. Indeed, whether it was by overcoming their demons or by learning to work with them in a healthier fashion, their paths up until now had been well worn, and while they may have had to rest from time to time, he was proud to be a part of why their steps continued to face forward. Proud, but also lonely at the thought of saying goodbye. As their second year drew to a close, lacking in grandiose events but still rewarding in its own right, it was this mixture of emotions that bore conflict with him most. Can't believe I'll be going through it all over again next year and even the year after that. Hell of a career I chose to pursue, huh? Reen is very proud of his students. You are correct, Crimson. He didn't know when he stopped walking. Realizing this, he resumed his search, paying respect in mind to the many generations of educators who came before him. No matter where he looked, he could not find Master Kafai in Long Lai. It was, however, still too early to say whether the trip had been in vain. He had at least caught an unverified report of the Blade Master being seen in the mountains to the south. Wandering such terrain at night wasn't going to be ideal, but Reen was already firm on spending the next day with his family. Tonight it would have to be. Making a brief stop to the inn to tuck his souvenirs somewhere secure, he then departed for his new destination. The mountain's winding, half-beaten trails would be more treacherous at night, but they were not off-limits as such. The key, Reen knew, would be to not rely on sight alone. His senses of hearing and smell, perhaps even touch, were going to be equally vital in the hours ahead. Calling upon his experience and intelligence to heighten all five senses, he took his surroundings in full. This really takes me back to training in the mountains. To call the experience training would imply his time of being one of simple tutelage between student and master, but it equated to so much more. The danger was far worse than it was now, with some days requiring him to set foot in highly dangerous territories just to find the day's food to survive. Sounds like the Kunlun Mountains may have been used for a similar exercise long ago. Reen was certain to think on the information gained during his search as he continued along the trail. Searching for evidence of human activity in an environment like this was not a difficult task. Humans always leave behind something indicative of their presence behind that no creature could. Be it a long-dead fire, footprints, or traces of going on the hunt. One only need follow the like to lead to the source. Reen did so, advancing with the caution instilled in him by both his old master and hunting enthusiast of a father. They soon led him to precisely to clear evidence that a human had been in the area, though the evidence itself was far from what he expected. Remains of a camp? No, it didn't look like it had been left by martial artists or in training or by roaming hunters. But the most peculiar thing was that there were multiple sites like the first, all evenly spaced from one to the next. It was as though something was being measured. Maybe this is from a group of scholars doing field research, but it seems too large in scale for that. There is nothing more to be found here, Reen advanced. Soon after, he found another useful mound of evidence. It's like someone forced their way through here in a car. Or more like hacked and open a path wide enough for a car to be passed through. All further inspection here suggested that whoever was responsible had given up on this endeavor, leading him to wonder if they somehow found success elsewhere. And if they did, why had they done all this at all? The question pestered him. If there was anywhere to clear wide paths, the remote depths of the mountain certainly were not it. But instincts told him he was only a step away from discovering the answer. If I keep following this trail a little farther. At this thought, Reen sensed someone approaching. One person? Two people. Yes, there were two people. And it was clear they were aware of his presence as well. Only for a fleeting second did he think they might be the ones responsible for the strange trails, but a deadly tension that now thickened in the air told him they were no simple scholars. He felt them draw near, the night veiling themselves well, and then he felt them stop. How about you show yourselves? He spoke without placing his hand on his tachi, signifying to those watching that he had no desire to fight. Their silhouettes then silently emerged from the darkest shadows of the mountains. They looked very much like the shinobi of the east he had heard about, their forms clad from top to bottom in black garments and their faces fully obscured. I see your insight poses a threat after all, Divine Blade of the Empire. The contract with our clients has yet to begin, but we will make an exception for one among their list of dangerous persons. The silhouettes then charged. They caught him completely off guard, drawing short, straight blades to attack him as they narrowed in. Yes, Organization 13, Frost. Exactly. Reen's eye widened in surprise, but nearly in that same moment, he was in a fighting stance, hand over his still-sheathed tachi. Fifth form, Morning Moon. He perceived the direction of his foes' attacks to evade them, then mounted a counterattack of his own. All it took was that instant to repel their assault and leave them vulnerable. Ordinarily, this would be the time to take the offensive, but all Reen could do was stare at the two with disbelief. The thought entered my mind as I saw you move, but now that we've crossed blades... He paused, his disbelief in his eyes gave way to a more intense gaze. Are you... practitioners of the Eight Leaves School? Another pause, this time from the silhouettes before answering, as though they were well aware of the question was coming. No, though we do possess ties to the school. We are of the Ikaruga, practitioners of the Black God One Blade School. The what? Reen was left stunned. The two Ikaruga held their blades horizontally, ready to thrust them forward at any moment. It was as though they wanted to make clear that while they had been caught off guard once, he would not be so fortunate twice. Reen responded by assuming the middle stance with his tachi. But just as the sides were only a beat away from engaging in battle, what could only be described as a black cyclone roared from the darkness at such speed that it seemed certain to slice anything it touched. Its appearance caught Reen by surprise more than the initial attacks by the silhouettes. He had not suspected an attack from that angle, that distance, or even that moment. His enemies, on the other hand, did not so much as flinch at the sight. The approaching blade, over an arch and a half in length, was heading directly for Reen's back. He couldn't possibly dodge it now. Perhaps he should have noticed, perhaps it was impossible to notice. Whatever the answer, the Divine Blade of the Empire would soon fall. The silhouettes waited for his final moments to be, convinced of no other fate in his future. When Reen spun his body in a full circle, applying the intensity built into his tachi from the motion to the swing. The blow made its weighted yet precise shifting in the shifting the incoming blade to a new direction without mitigating its near overpowering force. I can't read chat. Budget going crazy, that's right, Frost. Technique was an application of the first form, Helix. There's no greater course in the moment than to use it to redirect an attack without it ever making direct contact. Spinning Blade was now significantly off its intended course, but Reen slashed at it again, birthing a shockwave that further shifted its path. The blade went flying hairs to the right of the direction it had come from. A hand was there to deftly catch it midair. You may have only recently taken the title, but you are worthy of being called a Divine Blade all the same. You used the unclouded eye well. From this hand emerged a new figure from the darkness. While he was clad in similar garments to the silhouettes, something about his presence was much more inspired by comparison. His musculature was thoroughly discernible beneath his body covering fortified suit. His every movement, however slight, reflected a complete lack of hesitation, and the faint light of his eyes, visible through his mask, projected no emotion whatsoever. The man possessed the aura of a true warrior, one projected only by those who have fought more battles than was possible to count. Fall back. He's too formidable a foe for you to handle. The silhouette slid into the darkness in an instant. Only the new arrival was left to face Reen. I need to know. Who are you and why did you attack me? Our contract forbids the disclosure of such information. You will leave this place now, fledgling Divine Blade. The tone was not one of advice nor one of an order. It was as if the man were stating a fact, his calmness veiling an undertone of malice that told Reen what would happen if he did not do as he was told. I'm afraid I can't do that without an explanation. Not when I haven't found what I'm looking for yet. I understand. Then, there was no longer anything to discuss. All they could do was battle. I, Kurogane of the Rogetsu School, shall be your opponent. Kurogane stood at attention. The large blade he had thrown before now pointed. I'd rather have settled this with words, but I can see that's not an option. Reen sighed, taking his own stance in turn. Reen Schwarzer, Master of 8 Leaves, 1 Blade, School 7th Form, shall be yours. The Divine Blade moved instantly. The bizarre weapon Kurogane wielded was less akin to a sword, and more 4 equally sized blades rearranged in the shape of a cross, their bases connecting to a single point. He could then he could direct this large weighted shuriken as though it were a simple child's toy, spoke volumes about how strong he was. Still, even it was not infallible, for it was not one to be ideally used in close-range combat. Kurogane appeared to have no other key weapons on hand either, meaning that if Reen could force him to fight where he would be at his most disadvantageous, he would likely come out of this the victor. This was what he had in mind when choosing to act first. Second form, Gale! Hey, another animated second Frost. He closed the gap between them, drew his blade, and made a wide swing towards his opponent in the blink of an eye. Kurogane blocked the blow with ease. That, however, meant nothing in this larger scheme of things. Reen knew well this man's capabilities. So long as the gap between them was closed, and it was, he considered the attack a success. But just as he thought he would be able to push onward and overpower his foes by mounting a newly fierce assault, Kurogane had split his cross-shaped shuriken in half. The ease at which he did made it clear this was intended by design. He can dual-wield double sabers. There is no hiding his shock. In the West, double sabers were seen as relics from the Dark Ages that were difficult to utilize. Crow was the only person Reen knew who was competent with one, and only one. The skill it would take to use 2 was almost too difficult to fathom. His surprise created an opening that Kurogane was not going to let pass unexploited. Processing thin 2-ended blades allowed the shinobi to perform considerably more strikes than Reen, giving him no chance to push back. Steel sparked as their weapons clashed. Kurogane was dominant for some time, but he could do nothing to bolster his advantage. With strike and spark after strike and spark, the advantage was moving back to Reen. This was in part due to him being used to fighting this weapon that defied rationale, but it was also because he had been given the time to find what he was looking for, the perfect range in which to attack. Double sabers were forged with a shorter reach than they appeared to have, something inevitable due to their handle being in the middle. It could have been because he also used them as a shuriken, but the length of Kuragane's sabers were even shorter than Crow's, meaning Rin would have to adjust with the longer length of his blade. He measured patiently, staying only just out of Kuragane's reach and evading the onslaught by a hair's breadth each time prior to countering. It was calculated quickly thanks to Kuragane's frequent rapid attacks, meaning all Rin had to do now was wait for the right moment. This moment would come in the form of his opponent showing impatience for this stalled battle, driving him to take an unneeded step forward. Rin evaded the strike expertly, instantly returning it with an upward diagonal slash. The forceful swing of his tachi made contact with the handle of Kuragane's own swung weapon, knocking it clean out of his hand. Rin dashed forward to make use of this veiled opportunity, but only after a flicker of bewilderment, Kuragane moved to deny him. He blocked Rin's attack with the double saber still in his possession, then hurled a hidden kunai with his free hand, jumping backward a significant distance while doing so. Very good, Divine Blade of 8 Leaves. You may pale to the skills of our princess, but you without a doubt deserve your reputation. Princess? Rin's intonation was unanswered as Kuragane took a notably different stance than before. I shall demonstrate my respect for your skill with my finest technique. This put Rin staunchly on guard. Senses heightened, he focused every nerve in his body, fixing his eyes on whatever was to come of Kuragane, who was now gone. Nothing remained where Rin's opponent had just stood. He hadn't taken his eyes off of him, never eased himself for a moment, yet Kuragane was nowhere to be seen. How? Had he moved that quickly? Was it some kind of spatial translocation? But there were no signs to indicate either one. Was it that he had never moved at all and was still there, sight unseen? No, that wasn't it either. The double saber Rin had repelled to the ground was also gone. I can still sense him, so he hasn't gone far. Invisibility cloak like what Hercules uses? Rin suppressed the panic welling up within him, honing his senses at a second time. That was when another black cyclone swirled towards him from the shadows. He half expected something of this nature, so with little deviation, he was able to deflect it as he did the first time. The attack indicated that Kuragane had reassembled his shuriken after recovering its lost half, so he could throw it again. It also indicated, together with a slight change in his surroundings, where he was now positioned. Rin needed a little more time to know where he was for certain, but ahead of making a solid conclusion, the cyclone came at him yet again from a new angle. That was fast. Though he blocked this attack as well as the last, before he could fully correct his posture, the next cyclone approached. The gap between was something. I accidentally pushed the button too quickly. The gap between was getting shorter and shorter. There was another, the time was shorter, and another shorter. Soon, these assorted smaller cyclones were seemingly growing into a blended grand storm of death, with Rin trapped at its center. This doesn't feel like I'm being attacked by a single person. Did he make copies of himself? Are there just multiple people? He had no idea from where the next cyclone would form, and by the time he located it, the next one was ready. Even the unclouded eye wasn't going to be enough for him to deduce Kuragane's location. He'd been able to repel every blade that met with his so far, but that was growing increasingly difficult. Of course they're gonna reuse the same animation, Frost. They don't got the budget for multiple sword slices. I didn't want to use this, but I'm not so sure I have a choice. Well aware that doing so would place him in danger, Rin took his mind off the battle. He gave up blocking and evading attacks, deciding that dedicating the bare minimum of his focus to not sustaining lethal blows, and focusing his mind inward. He focused on the power that he had long cultivated inside of him. Just threw that shit into paint and hit rotate. Yup. The power he had feared, loathed, and rejected. The power he now relied on, desired, and nearly surrendered himself to. The power he faced with his loved ones at his side, making it a true part of himself. Spirit unification. With his mind clear as day, he unleashed his full strength. Enlightened spirit unification. He imbued his Tachi with the great power surging out of him, crying out as he did so, and spinning his body forcibly around to create a bladed circle around him. The energy released by his Tachi repelled all forthcoming shuriken with ease, and with them, Kuragane's phantom copies lurking in the darkness faded to nothing. With that, there you are. He charged towards Kuragane. The man who was thoroughly overwhelmed by Reen's sudden counterattack, throwing him completely off balance. There was nothing he could do to repel what would come next. It's time to settle this. Reen swung his Tachi downwards while pouring all of his might into a final single strike. But just as the two felt the battle was coming to an end, Zeroth form, duality. Accompanied with a voice as beautiful as a bell was a slash tearing through the sky, its color so black it threatened to eclipse the moon. It effortlessly stopped Reen's weapon from reaching its target, but that wasn't all. What? With a high-pitched metallic sound, Reen's beloved Tachi was sundered cleanly in two. Uh-oh. Princess? Kuragane was also taken aback by this new arrival. I heard what was happening from both our scouts. You could have invited me to join the fun instead of keeping it all to yourself. The words she chided Kuragane indicated dissatisfaction, but the music of her tone betrayed her excitement. Reen made to see who this mysterious figure was. And the sight of her alone took his breath away. She was young, wearing a fortified suit that looked to be a marriage of classical and modern Eastern styles, with long silver hair and that almost appeared to glow in the pale moonlight. Her age was likely close to Reen's, perhaps a little younger, with well-defined features that still held trace of adolescence, pairing strikingly in contrast to the empty void behind her eyes. There was the air of young noblewoman who had been sheltered from impurities all her life, and the stench of a baleful warrior who had bathed in the blood of countless lives. How she was both and neither at once, Reen could not understand. But it was this very quality that made her all the more captivating and dangerous. In the woman's left hand was a large black engraved blade that threatened to freeze him for daring glance at it. No doubt this was what halved Ree's Tachi moments ago. What did... Reen fumbled over the words as he clutched his useless handle tightly in his hand. The fair-haired woman only smiled as she looked down upon it. Your weapon was very fine, but it was never any match for my friend, I'm afraid. She spun the black blade in her hand around gently before holding it up towards the night sky to seemingly display it with pride. It wasn't hard to see why she would boast about possessing such a weapon. He had seen many a blade of historical significance, but instinct told him that hers was better than any of those. The blunt side featured in intricate designs of deep gray that, while he could not discern its meaning there and then, he knew was nothing less than a work of art. There was an aura about it, one as cold as ice, that seemed to reject its worldly surroundings, making it capable of cutting through anything it so desired. It came in company with a beautiful hilt of deep red that contrasted its body without feeling out of place. This juxtaposition was, in a sense, much a reflection of its wielder, with their two opposing natures being distinctive yet also as one. Reen thought as he observed, her blade was clearly something special, but that alone did not explain the strength behind her attack. He had never heard of the technique she used, but it was clearly connected to the 8 leaves in some way, and the skill she showed in executing it made her equal to a divine blade. He was so fixated on these thoughts rushed through his mind that he was only brought out by her sudden laughter. I didn't think I'd ever meet you here. I wonder if our old master is behind guiding us to the same place. Or if it's just a happy coincidence. Wait. The manner in which she spoke and her familiarity with Reen gave him a theory. That technique you just used was really something. Consider me intrigued. It's put you a league above more interesting than our senior practitioners. So he was right. Are you? But before he could hear what he already knew, she turned away, refusing to let him finish the question. He isn't here, so why don't you go run back to your family? Go and make the most of your vacation. Just don't let your skill with a blade slip. The world will need it again one day. She spoke with a certain satisfaction, as she pointed down to the other half of his broken blade. And then she leaped high, seemingly disappearing on the other side of the moon. Reen could only stare, dumbfounded as she vanished. He couldn't even speak. Kuragane left with her. The Ikaruga, the Black God One Blade School, and our senior practitioners. Reen had been unable to fulfill his objective. And not just that, he was left with countless new questions about the people he encountered and the mountain itself. He felt there was meaning behind being guided to this specific place, but how important it was or what it entailed, he did not know. And yet, the person responsible for discerning that won't be me. Looking down at his broken tachi, he was struck anew with how massive the world truly was. And he realized that now that his master was confirmed to be elsewhere, the purpose of his visit to Longlai, was nothing more than to enjoy a wonderful, ordinary vacation with his family. This meeting here was a peculiar coincidence. For now, at least. When I get back, I'll need to reforge my tachi, and myself. Something stirred in this region, all across Calvard, but there was nothing he could do about that as he was. All he could focus on was training and bettering himself, so that he could one day play a part against the next threat that loomed over the distant horizon. New resolve welling in his soul, he made his way through the now still mountain trail, back to where his loving family awaited. Another hot springs paradise. The end. Also, chat, don't think I didn't notice that the ninja's name was Kurogane, and the Japanese name for Trails Through Daybreak is Kuro no Kaseki. Don't think I didn't catch that, chat, because I did. Unconventional student. April, year 1208 of the Septine calendar. Aramis Academy is a famous educational instruction in the Calvardian capital of Edith. The name derives from an artistic central to Calvard's democratic revolution 100 years ago. This is also reflected in its goal of nurturing new talent and helping to forge a brighter future for a new republic. The Academy placed great value on traditional education, of course, but it also encouraged the perspectives of new cultures and values, attracting many an independent mind from across the area. It was a storied place of learning that reflected the Republic's views as a whole. This story, for its part, begins not long after the Springtime Festival held yearly to welcome the new student body. This was just another morning at the Academy, countless students shuffling through its grounds, when one of them in particular happened to draw an unusual amount of attention. The young lady had long, soft, violet hair crowned with a black ribbon. Her figure had been cut very respectably as she matured into a young woman of 17 years, and her face still held traces of girlhood days bygone. The beauty she was, she never failed to turn inquisitive heads as she strolled along. Her name was Wren Bright. Hey, we get a look at her design, her new design. She was a second-year student from, I don't remember if they said Genus, Yenis. I like Yenis, but I know that wasn't what they said. I think it was just Genus. She was a second-year student from Genus Royal Academy in Liberl, now studying at Aramis as part of an exchange program. She had only just arrived in the spring. Wren's goal was attending was not to further her education. She had been considered a highly gifted since she was a child, having already earned several doctorates in years past, and there was little more a new academy could reasonably teach her. Her goal, in reality, was to use it as a front to operate freely in Calvard. It was hard to find one better than being a student. She already found the role relatively foolproof during her time at Genus. Even if there were limits to how much a student could get away with, society as a whole was soft on school children. To move freely would also require drawing as little attention as possible. She aimed to conduct herself modestly, as any elegant young lady who wished to remain unseen should during her time at Aramis. There was just one very big problem with this plan. Good morning, Miss Bright. Isn't she just gorgeous? Look, I see her. She's so beautiful, and everyone says she's just as smart, too. All she had to do was walk down the hall to be showered with greetings and whispers of envy and admiration. Her looks alone were already enough to make her the talk of the school, but after one of the teachers let slip that she received a perfect score on her entrance exam, there was suddenly not a single person who didn't know her name. See, for somebody who's trying to keep a low profile, she sure is being herself, which is not helping. The other students cared not how much she wanted to avoid drawing attention. She was getting it, whether she liked it or not. Naturally, not everyone was pleased with the blooming popularity of this new transfer student had attained in less than a month. While most were busy fawning over Wren's arrival that morning, another group watched the charade unfold in the shadows, echoing audible tuts of displeasure. Wren had yet to be enrolled in any clubs, so as soon as the day's lessons had come to an end, she packed her belongings and stood to leave. A word, if I may, Miss Bright. It was a fellow classmate, surrounded by a small fraction of students, clearly loyal to their king bee. Certainly. Though her instinct told her this was not going to be a conversation she wanted to have, she made an effort to pretend otherwise. She would not be provoked into behaving as anything but a mature, modest young lady. I've been wanting to get to know you better for some time now, you see, so I was wondering if you might join me for dinner this evening. The boy, Ronald Griffith, presented as a gentlemanly smile. Blech. Wren was very much used to being asked out like this, and never once did she accept. She always made up some excuse to turn them down. Today would be no different. I'm ever so sorry, but I'm afraid I have something urgent to take care of after school today. Some other time, perhaps. This was usually enough to get them to give up, but Ronald was a persistent one. Well, that won't do. I have something very important to discuss with you. And I've already booked us a table at a very fine restaurant, so we could discuss in detail. Is there really no way your business can wait? There was something ominous about his smile. Wren couldn't help but be curious what he was thinking. I'm afraid it can't. I'm so sorry that you've gone out of your way to prepare ahead of time. Still, I could spare a little time right now, so I'd be happy to talk here if that's all right. So not tonight then. A pity. Ronald's tone read one less of a genuine sadness and more irritation that things were not going according to plan. While aware that he let slip his true feelings on the matter, he quickly composed himself and smiled. Now is better than ever, I suppose. This does concern everyone in the room, so perhaps it's all for the better said here. To this, Ren glanced around the room, noticing that only she, Ronald, and his lackeys were all who remained. Most were likely on their way home or in their respective clubs. While some would have ordinarily been in the classroom at this hour, she was certain none wanted anything to do with Ronald and his group. He took a step toward her and then began to speak. I'm well aware, Miss Bright, that you have come all the way from the distant Liberal to be here. It's not unusual for students to transfer from afar for family reasons. But I hear in your case, you came to Calvert not just to learn in these hallowed halls. I cannot help but deeply admire your spirit and thirst for knowledge. Pure theatrics, this one. At the same time, I worry about you. Brilliant you may be, but living alone in a far-off land must be terribly lonely and a challenging affair. We all need someone to depend on in our lives, and that would be especially so in your situation. So if you don't mind me saying so, Miss Bright, I believe you're in need of someone to look after you, to protect you. Thank you for the hydrate, Frost. Did someone say thirst? I don't know, but he seems pretty thirsty right now. Thank you. At last he shut up, giving Ren a chance to respond. She scrutinized him closely. In short, you'd like for me to join your circle of friends, correct? Ronald's smarmy smile broadened. His father was a senator in the Republic's parliament, meaning he held a significant amount of political power. His son used this to his full advantage. Ever since joining the academy, Ronald had used his father's name to form a faction of sorts among the students, forcibly building his reputation until he was leading candidate for the student council president in the election staged in half a month's time. His goal, Ren assumed, was to bring the hottest talk of the academy into his faction to further secure his chances of victory. I think that you'll find that joining us would help you feel much more secure and at home here. Or perhaps you don't yet appreciate just how much of a difference having someone like me backing you would make on the life of an exchange student. True, she mused inwardly. Being in a group of high social standing would make it easier for her to gather information. If she could leverage his father's connections to build more of her own, that would pay itself in dividends in the days to come. The pompous boy had no way of knowing the actual circumstances that brought her to Aramis, but his proposal was in fact very beneficial to her. She returned his smile with a modest one of her own as she answered. You're kind to think so much of me, but I'm afraid I'll have to decline. Clear, unambiguous rejection. Ronald's lips were still curled into a smile, but he could not hide the twitch of his brow, nor could his lackeys hide their shock. They had, by all accounts, expected her to answer the opposite. Are you sure you won't consider Miss Bright? Not Mr. Bright. Wrong person for Mr. Bright. Surely someone as brilliant as yourself can see why accepting my offer would be in your best interest. I fear if you don't now, you may, well, come to regret it. Yes, that's her father. The last words were a hair slower and deliberate to intimidate her. Ren, of course, was never going to fall for it. I'll admit it is a tempting proposal, tempting enough to inspire one to consider helping a certain someone win the student council election. If only that someone weren't you. What did you just say? The sudden taunt caught him completely off guard, resulting in a flare of irritation escaping him. Ren, for her part, was unruffled by the change. I imagine you don't need me to explain why, but I will, to be sure. I've been very aware that the threatening glares I always attract on the way to school every morning have been coming from all of you. They've been a constant in my life ever since, just before the festival. All were flabbergasted by the statement, their silence confirming what she said to be true. She continued. Now, you have every right to regard me with caution. I'm well aware of how much I stand out despite my best efforts. Taking potential threats under your own wing is a strategically sound move, too. However, your target was so easily able to see through your scheme, shows everyone here just how inept you really are. I have better things to do than assist someone so incompetent and small-minded. With a shrug and a sigh in a somewhat dramatic fashion, Ren stood before Ronald, his shoulders trembling from rage. Good day to you all. Ren gave a courteous nod of acknowledgement before leaving the room, paying no mind to the wide eyes and open slack jaws she left behind. So, Hackett ended up getting pretty beat up from another one of Mom's crazy jobs she threw at him. Oh, this is probably Tita. So, Hackett ended up getting pretty beat up from another one of Mom's crazy jobs she threw at him. We did get some good data out of it, but ouch. Your mom's always so funny. That night in the dormitory, Ren and Tita were engrossed in deep conversation through their laptops. But it's always the same old with all of you. I'm surprised there's anything of Agate left with how often you tell me she has him nearly facing death. You two are in a rut. I know something that could spice things up. Maybe try adding a little romance to the mix, like a couple of bright-eyed lovebirds we know. Please don't. Please don't. But we have agreed to go somewhere next week, so we're not in a complete rut. Well, isn't that something? The stairs to adulthood await you, my dear friend. Ren! Tita graduated from the branch campus in Arabonia just as Ren left for Calvard, leaving them no time to spend with one another in person. This wasn't ideal, of course, but from a hint of sadness came the habit of talking like this once a week so they could stay in each other's lives. They discussed anything from their new lives and environments to the fruits of their research, occasionally stumbling into a serious topical matter or two along the way. It sounds like a legal confrontation between the Verne Company and Epstein Foundation is inevitable at this point. I know, I can't believe this is really happening. Both frowned at their screens. Don't you love how they're still friends? That I do appreciate that. A recent development concerning the Calvardian industrial giant Verne Company had become a key source of concern for them as late. Hey, I see Russell and Erica and Tio. Is that supposed to be Schmidt there? I'm not 100% sure. It began soon after Crossbell returned to normalcy after the Supreme Leader's takeover to the previous year. Professor Erica Russell approached the Verne Company to propose that they join the West Zemurian Tech Union she had been hard at work forming. And to no one's surprise, they refused. But before Erica and the rest of the engineers involved could even finish getting ready to go and change Verne's mind, something happened to make the Union the least of anyone's priorities. The independent development of a new generation of orbments, and their generation's long partner in the subset of technology, the Epstein Foundation, would not be a collaborator. The latter had been the key supporters of Zemuria's orbment development and orbital technology in general since the very inception. Battle orbments were no exception to this. The Foundation had known their way around them since the very first model, drafting the incredible concepts that had been used as a base ever since. Even the Reinford Company, before the Battle of Jormungandr, had not thought to develop their Arcus models on their own, instead favoring to develop them in partnership with Story Institute. The announcement was quite simply unprecedented, and it sent shockwaves throughout the industry. The Epstein Foundation was also less than pleased about being cast aside in this manner. While there were certainly legal concerns regarding who owned the patent to this technology, the greater concern was that their stable position in the industry as a whole was now becoming unstable. They initially responded by attempting to resolve this through peaceful means, but when those attempts proved fruitless, it was reported that they were preparing for what could only be an for what could only be an ugly international legal dispute. I'd say Vern has the upper hand if this ever makes it to court. Unlike the previous Ramda orbments, this 6th generation is designed to set a whole new standard. All of its main features are packed with new tech, with some new features still being kept under wraps. Is it Stein, not Stain? I'm not sure. Epstein. I'm not 100% sure which is correct, but I wonder what those are. What could they be trying to develop that's important enough to ruin their relationship with the Foundation? They go back and forth. You know what? You gotta love it when it's inconsistent. Though I have heard about the government telling the Vern Company to focus more on weapons development. I have too. Sounds like they're planning to significantly revamp the military's weaponry. The official story is that they're planning on slimming the military down, but if they're pairing that with the latest in weapons development, then they're still just as powerful, maybe even more so. As part of the war's ceasefire agreement, Erebonia was required to downsize their military, bringing it more in line with that of Calvard's. Yet if the Republic were to expand the capabilities of its military, this recently forced equilibrium in superpowers would be quickly broken. Whatever may be true, I've got a lot of questions I need answers to. Maybe it would be worth visiting the Vern Company's headquarters in Basel at some point. You haven't learned anything more about where Professor Hamilton is at the moment, right? Nothing new or concrete, at least. It sounds like she's continuing her research eastward, but I haven't heard anything more specific than that. Mom and Grandpa haven't had any luck in contacting her either. I'm not surprised, since that area is very well connected, but it's still unfortunate. She's a lot more personable than Professor Schmidt, so having her on her side would help a lot. If I can quote Axel, I hope you're getting all this memorized. It's a lot. There's a lot. It's at least like being absorbed. Tita could only laugh. Yeah. There's a lot of worrying stories about going around now about PMCs and stuff like that. It makes me wonder if none of this would even be happening if she was still acting as an advisor for the Vern Company. The deeper into the conversation they went, the more Tita could feel her spirits sinking. The political climate in Western Zemuria was unusually stable at the moment, with its nation basking in prosperity. But she could not shake off the feeling that this peace was built over rotting wood, and that it could all become crashing down with but the slightest provocation. This was becoming especially true in the tech world, as it had undergone rapid growth in recent years compared to other fields. So rapid, in fact, that no base could possibly sustain its sudden weight without cracks beginning to form. Try not to dwell too much on the worst-case scenario, Tita. This peace might rest on a knife's edge, but there's still plenty we can do to preserve it. That's why I'm here right now, and that's also why you're working so hard, too. We could find a million problems in the world if we wanted, but pessimism isn't going to make them go away, right? The words filled Tita with the right amount of comfort she needed in that precise moment. Yeah, I guess you're right. Thanks, Ren. They continued on, losing track of time as they talked well into the night. Before they knew it, the clock had struck 12. Well, it's getting really late, so I should probably be going. Talk to you soon, okay? Alright. Oh, I got them backwards. Whoops. Alright, good night, Tita. That was a really good impression of me, by the way. Good night. Oh! Tita suddenly remembered something. The exclamation stopped Ren just as she was about to end the call. Estelle and Joshua told me to ask you if you're doing okay in school. Those two always worry too much. You'd think I wasn't talking to them, too. She couldn't help but remember her interaction with Ronald after class. But Ren quickly drove the thought from her mind. It wasn't worth dredging up. Tell them they can rest easy. Everything is fine. Good. They wanted me to let you know that if you were being bullied, so they could fly over and help. Ren could only sigh. Honestly, do they think I can't keep myself safe from a few schoolyard bullies? Actually, they said they were more worried about what you do to them than what they do to you. That is fair. That is fair. At her friend's silence, Tita couldn't help but burst out laughing. I worry about you too, obviously, but they're probably right. How awful of you. Even if that were to happen to me, I wouldn't do half of what you're imagining. Not anymore, anyway. See, it's saying that kind of thing that makes people worried. Who is that? Is that the black? Yep, pretty much. Pretty much. I'm a lady now. I need the magnanimity to forgive the transgression of others. I'm also doing what I can to avoid standing out too much at school. You can try, but I think that's always been a lost cause. Anyway, now I'm really going to go before I remember anything else. Say hi to Zin for me if you run into him. I'm planning to go and see him when everything calms down here, so will do. I've been meaning to go and see someone else I've been indebted to in the past, too. By the time the two of them had finished talking about and ended the call, one day had given way to the next. It was after midnight, chat. The morning dawned yet another day of school. However, just as she left her classroom, the main building, at the start of lunch and went to descend the staircase, she felt someone suddenly draw near from behind her. Reflexively, she dodged out of the way. A female student entered her field of vision. She had lost her balance, her expression a mix of fear and surprise. She passed through the spot Ren had been moments before, but her momentum showed no sign of fading. If someone didn't stop her, she was going to start tumbling down the stairs. That is very dangerous. Ren was quick to grab her and pull her close. She supported the girl's weight with one arm, with all the grace of someone taking part in a ballroom dance, saving her from falling. Several students happened to witness the event unfold, and could not help but elicit gasps of admiration. Noticing that the girl's eyes were still unfocused, Ren gently addressed her. Are you alright? You aren't hurt, are you? Finally realizing the situation she was in, the girl, whose face had become quite red, quickly straightened her posture in a fluster. Yes, I'm okay. You're Ren Bright from next class over, aren't you? Thank you so much for helping me. You're very welcome. But I would have to caution you from losing your composure like that right next to a staircase. Do you have some really urgent business to take care of? The girl first frowned in response, then paused to think, then answer. Nothing I can think of. It's weird, but even though it was probably my imagination, it felt like someone had pushed me from behind. Obviously, no one here would do that, so I must have just bumped into someone by accident. You're probably being pushed. Probably being pushed into Ren. She thanked her rescue again before disappearing into the distance. The situation she had deemed her imagination, however, lingered in Ren's mind. If I hadn't sensed something was amiss, both of us would have fallen down the stairs. We could have been badly hurt. Was it really just a coincidence? Or was it a deliberate action by someone who wants to hurt me? If it was the latter... She didn't have anything to support this theory, but it came with a familiar sensation. The feeling of malicious stares focusing on her from the shadows. It took surprisingly little time for her suspicion to gain evidence. After finishing the gym class the next day, Ren made for the classroom and began preparing for her next lesson. As she did, she immediately noticed something was amiss. All of her textbooks had been glued shut with an excessive amount of adhesive. Trying as she did to open them, it was a lost cause to get even a single page. It was an obvious attempt to harass her. The culprits behind it were equally obvious. Not far from where Ren was sitting, Ronald Griffith and his lackeys, whom she so memorably turned away 2 days prior, were snickering to themselves. Their eyes mockingly focused on Ren all the while. They're not even interested in hiding what they're like anymore. I'm sure at this point they want me to know who did it to intimidate me. Yeah, he's dead. This latest development was also confirmed in her mind that they were responsible for trying to push her down the stairs the day before. What a pitiful sight they were. Because she was refused to join their group, her existence was, in their eyes, now nothing more than a hindrance to Ronald's campaign for student council president. They would stop at nothing to either break her spirit and force her to join or shame her into lowering her popularity among the student body. Didn't matter that Ren had no interest in taking part in the election. After further inspecting the state of her textbooks, Ren's expression grew difficult to read. I think I can make them usable again, but not in what little time I have left before class. The bell soon chimed to signal the start of her lesson. Ren left her textbooks out on top of her desk, making no effort to open them throughout. Her instructor was, of course, less than pleased about this perceived slight against them, picking her to answer a question as an attempt to chide her poor behavior. Miss Bright, please read the next paragraph aloud for us. Ronald and his friends let out a series of pleased giggles at this, their minds delighting at the thought of a flustered Ren being told off and humiliated in front of the entire class. But what transpired in reality played out very differently from their fantasies. Without missing a beat, Ren did exactly as she was told, reciting the selected paragraph she had been asked to read word for word, and all while her textbook remained closed. Did you memorize the entire book? Even the instructors could not handle their surprise. But of course. As a student of Aramis Academy, I would never dare to compromise in preparing for my lessons. Ren responded with such grace that she, of course, drew in more sighs and coos of admiration from both her instructor and peers alike. It was only Ronald and his posse who groaned with sullen expressions. The next incident came on Ren's way to school the next morning. She entered the school's gates with a horde of other students, and was just about to step into the building when she noticed a foul smell coming from above her. She looked upward, noticing a portion of the fencing surrounding the building's rooftop was falling directly above her. Other students noticed at the same time, letting out screams of horror and worries as they could do nothing about it. If I could get out of the way easily if I wanted to, but the fencing was over 2 arcs in length. She could escape unharmed, but other students around her would likely not. That was a risk she was unwilling to take. Grasping out the battle ornament she had hidden in her bag, she cried out, "Airstrike!" A sphere of wind formed in response to her incantation, flying upward at high speeds. She carefully controlled its power so that instead of sending the fence flying, it simply canceled out its momentum instead, allowing her to hop and catch it with ease. This was no accident. The smell makes it obvious. It was a distinct scent of liquid extracted from a certain plant monster. One of its properties was to imitate the natural corrosion of metal, resulting in its application in certain solvents. This made the fence falling a deliberate action on the perpetrator had been trying to disguise as an accident, and with Ren having been the target of several malicious acts already, the culprit was clear. Again, she could feel the presence of those familiar hateful stares pouring into her from the shadows. But again, they were not the only ones with eyes on her. Whoa! That was awesome! Did you see that? Is there anything she can't do? Ren's quiet mediation was disrupted by a multitude of cheers and applause from all around her. As if she were a performer just about to leave the stage, she gave an elegant bow in response. This would not be the last time she endured harassment from Ronald's group, but each and every time they thought they had bested her, she would handle herself with exemplary skill, their efforts only serving to make her more popular. The state of affairs continued for several more days before a seemingly out-of-patience Ronald summoned Ren behind the school building after their lessons were done for the day. He stood oppressively before her, his lackeys behind him, with a composure he attempted to feign before now being replaced by plain vile anger. Do I remember the voice that I did like 10-20 minutes ago? Let me give it to you straight, Ren Bright. You're an eyesore. Even the gentlemanly air he impersonated before it was gone. Really? Well, that's not a very polite thing to say to a classmate. Don't try to act cute and innocent. I put too much damn time and mirror into building my position up at this academy. But who's always at the center of attention instead? It's you. It's always you. It's like you're deliberately trying to sabotage my chances of success. That's the last thing I can afford right now. The more livid Ronald became, the more unruffled Ren was in return. You're only sabotaging yourself by setting me up to succeed over and over again. You are aware of that, aren't you? Had she not been forced to defend herself against him over and over again, she would not have received nearly as much attention. This being pointed out caused Ronald to return an audible tut of frustration. Who cares about how it happens? The point is, this has gone on long enough. So I'm gonna have to ask you to step off the stage for a while. What do you mean? Ronald seemed to present some of his initial cool from when they first talked as he answered. Oh, I mean something very simple. You just won't come to school until the election is over. And if I refuse? To this he raised a hand, and in response, his lackeys stepped forward to surround her. The boys were unusually well built for their age, showing off their hulking forms in hopes of intimidating her. Refusing is not an option, I'm afraid. If you aren't going to oblige me willingly, we'll just have to make it so you can't come to school for a while. His lackeys cracked their knuckles dramatically to clarify their leader's intent. Well, that's no good. I think we both know that would constitute a grave violation of the school rules. Something about her inflection caused him to mistake her commentary as showing a hint of fear, further fueling their desire to dominate the situation. You guys, she's been through paradise. I don't think anything you guys can do can intimidate her anymore. No one's watching a place like this. And even if someone did happen to see, my father's a politician. He can make it go away. If they don't willingly choose to ignore what they saw in defense to my position, that is. Everyone at this academy seems to already know their place, you see. Everyone except you. His smile was so unpleasant that a sigh escaped Reen. I think you're the one who doesn't know your place. I don't want to be rough with him after what Tita said. The friends she made up were nicer than these guys. True. Very true. But he needs to be taught a good, hard lesson. Ronald continued on, oblivious to what was running through his apparent victim's mind. Now do as I say. His lackeys drew closer, readying to seize her. If I keep it mild, I'll keep it mild, but I still want this to hurt for them. Just enough to set them on the right track. I don't think Estelle or Joshua would object to that. But just as she was about to act... Stop this at once! A girl's shout could be heard from the direction of the school building. She was, of course, not shouting at Ren. And who are you? And who are you? Ronald was visibly irritated. Though the girl appeared to be visibly nervous, she continued to stand her ground. I didn't mean to listen in, but I couldn't help but overhear what was happening here. You can't go through with this. What you're doing is wrong. The girl stepped forward until she was directly in front of Ren to protect her from the schoolyard bullies. As she did so, the light revealed sleek, dazzling blonde hair that shimmered much like the sunshine above. Ren recognized her to be a first-year student who lived in the dormitory next to her own. They weren't close to one another. At most, they only exchanged polite greetings with one another as they passed each other in the hall. She always seemed like a quiet, polite young woman who with a good upbringing. However, not the type whose eyes would glow with resolve as she put her well-being on the line for someone else's. Ren was surprised by this, as was Ronald, though he was less than impressed. He never fathomed that another student would dare to resist him. One thing he did sense was that her resistance was little more than a brave front. With excitement at the thought of stripping the front bare, he grew a sadistic smile and addressed her. Is it now? Well, how fortunate for me that I have you to show me the error of my ways. Ren couldn't wait. You're first year, I assume? I'm gonna need to give you a lesson, and just how right and wrong works in our society. Upon his signal, his lackeys shifted to surround their new target over Ren. She began to tremble as danger closed in upon her, but still she did not move. Don't you dare! This time it was Ren who spoke up. God, I'm getting my voices confused. I'll give you what you want, so don't you dare touch her. But... You sure about that? She wasn't planning on that response, but Ronald was more than happy to have this win in any form. I'll stay away from school for a while. That's what you want, right? That is indeed what he wants, chat. But then you... The experience of studying abroad has been rather tiring for me, so maybe I do need some rest. Ren's voice was gentle in an attempt to assure the girl's concerns. Ronald, meanwhile, made no attempt to hide the joy he felt at victory, laughing heartily with all the glee of a spoiled child. Good. Now everyone knows their place here. I see no reason to harm either of you now that I've got what I want. Consider yourselves lucky that I decided to let you go. Ronald turned away to make leave, his lackeys following suit. Good day to you, then. When next we meet, the school will be all mine. And then he was gone. With only the girls left behind, the school's building... With only the girls left behind the school building, the younger of the two looked at her senior, concern welling in her expression. I really am all right. You're very kind to worry. Ren's smile was one of genuine kindness. From then on, Ren did indeed stop coming to school, citing illness as the official reason behind her absence. The students then gathered in the Academy auditorium several days later for the long-awaited student council election. Aramis Academy as a whole placed great importance on the autonomy of its students, and as such, the student council exercised an unusual amount of power. It was also weighed upon them a massive amount of responsibility, such as being the sole planner for the Academy's festival, a symbol and celebration of spring in the capital. This, however, also led to the position being a major status symbol even long after graduation. All of this was why a number of students put their names forward to become student council president every year. Yet this year, a great majority of the most promising candidates dropped out under mysterious circumstances, leaving only Ronald and others associated with him on the ballot. Couldn't exactly boast about winning by default. Ronald and his superiors sat in the rest area, chuckling among themselves after the whole affair. Perhaps his name wasn't the only one on the ballot, but none of the others had done any certifiable campaigning, meaning his election was positively assured. Eventually, the time came for him to give his speech. It was a compelling one. He played the part of a respectable young gentleman as he delivered it, speaking with that same silver tongue he inherited well from his father. There were some moments where he failed to hide his arrogance, but no one else had prepared a speech to give. This was not the blow to his campaign it otherwise would have been. Now, if you could turn your eyes up to the screen. The screen he spoke of was at the back of the auditorium. This was a rather notable feature to have in a school building, to have anywhere, and it was installed several years prior for use in lectures and to display the recreational films. Other nations had yet to indulge in such luxuries, showing just how far ahead Calvard was in technology. Up until then, students had used it to display photographs during their speeches, but Ronald intended to take it another step further. He wanted to share a promotional video, and not a simple makeshift self-procured one that might ordinarily be presented by an amateur, but rather a professional work he paid considerable amount of money for. Its quality was genuinely impressive. His victory was written in stone, but this he knew would cement it that much more. Convinced that this would serve as the perfect beginning to his ascension to the top of the social hierarchy, he started the video. The musical number was it played was rousing, fitting. What followed then was Ronald appearing on the screen. So, how much Miria do you want for supporting me? I can make it worth your while. What? The video played before them was not the one he intended. Rather, it was an inspiration show of what he could bring to the student body. It was a recording of him bullying off one of his opponents just days before. As hushed whispers of confusion spread through the auditorium, the next clip played. If you know what's good for you, you'll withdraw your candidacy right now. Or the only thing you'll be president of is a hospital bed. Next was an equally unexpected scene of Ronald intimidating another candidate into withdrawing from the race. As it continued, Ronald realized what was going on. Someone out there had replaced his carefully prepared video with another. The initially hesitant whispers exploded into loud enough murmurs that he had to raise his voice over them in his attempt to quell the situation. This is all forgery! Someone is attempting to frame me! But just at that moment, as if waiting for his cries of denial, a girl's voice resounded from the auditorium's entrance. I'm afraid it's all entirely genuine. Her voice rang out with a wonderful clarity, charming all who heard it. She ran her hand through her violet hair and flipped it back as she talked and walked slowly towards the stage. Bribing potential threats, blackmailing, threatening, even executing violence against others, and many other cases of bullying besides. You are guilty on every single account, Ronald Griffith. Before anyone could fully understand what was happening, the student was on stage and staring Ronald down. All eyes were fixed upon this elegant figure. Indeed, without any effort at all, she had the air of a protagonist from some epic tale, making her long-awaited appearance. Damn it, Ren Bright. Must you insist on getting in my way at every turn? He growled through the sheet of sheer anger. In contrast, the recently absent Ren responded with brilliant composure. You are the one who is getting in the way of the fair running of this important election. Your countless crimes have made a mockery of the whole process. Ren then turned from Ronald to the rest of the student body as she continued to list his crimes alongside the still-running video. Some elicited frowns, others sympathy, others complete silence, but by the time she was finished, all were united in a single overpowering emotion, anger. It brings me no joy to say this about a fellow student, but I'm afraid it must be said. Ronald Griffith, you do not deserve to even attend this prestigious academy, much less be the president of its student council. Similar censure from the other students followed in rapid succession. Yeah, she's right! Stop ruining our academy! You've gone too far! Ren's accusations weren't the only reason for their anger. The students of Aramis had long loathed Ronald's oppressive behavior. They only hadn't spoken out before because they were afraid of his father's power. Now they realized he could be stopped. Their anger had reached an explosive boiling point. Ronald suddenly found himself at the center of a torrent of abuse. He looked to his lackeys for support, but even they refused to meet his gaze. It then dawned on him just how fragile all he thought he built up was. Rage gave way to an instant deep despair, and casting a glare of pure hatred towards Ren, Ronald hurriedly sprinted out of the auditorium. Only when he was completely out of sight did the air erupt with cheers of joy. In the end, addressing the aftermath of the election took long enough that by the time she left for the gates, it was already evening. Excuse me. Yet even with how late it was, instead of walking her usual route home, she stepped off the path to enter an entirely unoccupied park. How does this work? No one's going to interrupt us here, so how about you come on out? In response to her words, Ronald emerged before her for the first time since he ran away earlier in the day, and with 10 or so companions in tow. These men weren't his usual lackeys, but instead vicious figures with dark expressions and gaudy clothing. They were clearly not students of the academy. Mafia! More than likely, they belonged to some local gang. You don't keep very good company outside of school now, do you? With how they're dressed up, I assume that you must be off to a party or something. I'm gonna wipe that smug smirk right off that face for good, Ren Bright. Is he straight up threatening murder? My dazzling future in politics was guaranteed. And now you've gotten ruined everything. What am I supposed to say to my father now? That's your problem, not mine. Or are you so small a man that you can't own up to the consequences of your own mistakes? Not a second passed between his outburst and the manner in which she snapped back, causing his temper to grow twice as vile. That's it. I don't care what it takes. You're going to pay for thinking you could cross me and get away with it. Have at her. There won't be any consequences for going too far. My father will see to that. The men sprung into motion upon Ronald's signal. But what followed made them doubt their eyes. Ronald could not understand what had just unfolded before him. His eyes relayed the information well enough, but his mind rejected it completely. The second after he ordered his new lackeys to attack, Ren had procured a monstrously sized black and gold scythe from thin air. This, in and of itself, was beyond comprehension, but it wasn't the last thing to be so. The scene was like a cat toying with a powerless, concerned mouse. Except, in the shocking case, Ren was the cat, and his men were the mice. They surrounded her at first, and yet all it took was a single swing of her conjured weapon to cause most of them to collapse to the ground. In less than 10 seconds, their confidence had crumbled with their bodies. The mice made to scurry as fast as they could, but the cat gleefully gave chase. There were even moments where she let a few think they had gotten away, only for her to immediately close the gap between them. It was only after she was bored that she would knock them unconscious like the rest. Then she would seek delight in her next hunt. Like heavy sacks of potatoes, the men fell one by one, until only Ren and Ronald were left. This can't be happening! The young man was still struggling to come to terms with what he had just witnessed, as Ren stretched her limbs like a bored child, still gearing up to play. Amateurs. Every last one of them. I thought I could at least have a little fun. Oh, but don't you worry. I didn't actually slaughter them. She turned her gaze from the spectacle of her own creation to Ronald. Would you be open to giving me a little more entertainment, perhaps, Ronald? Ronald twitched in fear at the mention of his name. In this moment, she was now nothing more than a beast in human skin. Stay away from me! My father's in Parliament, you know. Try anything on me and you'll regret it! Her response was an expression of pure pity before tossing what appeared to be a magazine at his feet. It's one of today's tabloids. You might find its contents relevant. What? At first, he was baffled by the shift, but the second he peeked at the cover, his face went pale. Representative Griffith suspected of bribery and connections to organized crime, read the headlines in a giant punchy lettering. It was at that moment that Ronald knew he fucked up. It's true. There's a whole special feature on your dearest daddy, complete with evidence. It mentions that the CID is going to be conducting an investigation as well. So this may be the last day you can say he's in Parliament. My condolences. No. So visceral was his shock at the news that the simple word was all he could muster. Even then, Ren wasn't finished. So now that he's been removed from the equation, I'll ask again. Would you be open to giving me a little more entertainment? She edged closer and closer, scythe in hand, and a sadistic smile lacing her lips. Ronald tried to retreat in fear before tripping over a rock and falling hopelessly on his backside. All he could do was watch her as though she were the Grim Reaper, tears and snot streaming down his face. Be a doll and play with me. Then you'll understand why they used to call me the Angel of Slaughter. She raised her scythe above her head as she readied to swing it down before realizing what she said. Oops. A grown woman shouldn't play with dolls, though, would she? And here I thought I could better control my childish glee. She covered her mouth with her free hand, blushing with feminine modesty at her slip-up. None of this was behavior befitting the proper lady she wanted to reflect. I mean, neither was how she handled the rest of the people, but whatever. After composing herself, she turned her attention back to her prey, only to see he was already unconscious. Finished? As she left the park, a calm young man called out to her. I certainly am. Ren met eyes with a brown-skinned young man, leaning covertly against one of the trees. It was safe to assume he had witnessed the entire affair unfold. He glanced inside the park for a brief moment before speaking with a slight but genuine admiration. You really are something. In what way? In every way. Even if I was more struck by the hacking abilities of the famous Kitty than the combat prowess of the infamous Angel of Slaughter. Still hard to believe that you managed to find dirt on his bigwig dad that easily. Ren's response was matter of fact, showing no sign his praise had gone to her head. Most people just aren't as cautious about cybersecurity as they ought to be. Understandable with how new most are to it. Of course, it isn't nearly as easy as this was when you're dealing with leading corporations and politicians at the top of the food chain. You make it sound like you've tried before. Maybe I have. Ren's smile was both cryptic and darling. I've been more impressed with you. You were quick to write a place that's scathing while also finding me exactly the proof I need. I'm glad Grace introduced us. Ooh, Grace knows him? Just doing my job. The man's name was Dingo, and he was a professional reporter for a tabloid. Ah, that explains it. He was extremely capable at his job, very well connected, and held a reputation for never shying away from danger. After being introduced to one another by Grace Lynn, he and Ren made a deal with each other just a few days prior. The terms were simple. Dingo would provide Ren with proof of Ronald's misdemeanors, and Ren would use her hacking abilities to provide evidence of his father's crimes. You love Dingo? You know what? Fair. Both were now reaping the rewards of the other's success. Though I'll admit that I did get some help from a friend. He was none too pleased about being asked to look into a scummy politician's equally scummy son, but he pulled through. Oh, I think I got the voice backwards. Whatever. Oh, you have all kinds of connections, don't you? She did sense someone other than Dingo was acting on her behalf while she was off school, but she wasn't sure who that someone was. This curious sensation regarding their identity remained as she continued the conversation. You know, I'm surprised that you didn't meet with any resistance in running that story. That just goes to show how big a fan the government was of Griffith. They left him alone because he didn't actively oppose the current president's party, but from the CID's perspective, this chance to take him down was about as good as it was gonna get. That does sound like something Miss Taito Master over there would do. I can't say I like the feeling of being used by her, but oh well. Think I know who that she's talking about there. Dingo then made a curious observation. I have to wonder why you went to such lengths to get rid of a small fry like him. He really bother you that much? Ren glanced briefly at Ronald, still collapsed on the ground of the park, before shrugging her shoulders dismissively. Not in the least. I didn't intend for this to go as far as it did either. I only wanted to teach him enough of a lesson so he'd leave me alone, but it was then that the younger student who tried to save her came to mind. I think the students deserve a much better student council president than him. She then let out a titter that was most refined. As Wren expected, the allegations led Ronald's father to resign from Parliament while he resigned from Aramis Academy. The group of students who exerted power over the student body with his backing vanished overnight as a result, bidding peace to return to the grounds for the first time in too long. One thing, however, came from this that Wren had not expected in the least. Here are all the documents relating to next month's budget. The student council's new president accepted the documents from the blonde-haired first year in charge of general affairs, perusing them straight away. After Ronald dashed from the auditorium the day of the election, most of those in his group who put down their name dropped out in a timely fashion. Voting still took place even then, but once all was said and done, nearly 70% of the votes cast were disqualified. This was because they were all in favor of someone who had never put her name on the ballot, Wren Bright. Aramis Academy was known for how little its staff interfered with many liberties it gave its students, but this time the staff was clearly concerned that dissatisfaction with Ronald was going to present dire problems in the future. The teachers then chose to directly negotiate with Wren, and in the face of such fervent demand, she reluctantly accepted the position of student council president. Oh hey, she's the president, Chet! None of her duties posed a challenge to her, but by accepting it, she had completely and utterly failed her initial goal of avoiding attention. I don't know, I think you failed that as soon as you started posting up scandalous videos of Ronald. I wonder if this is how Thor's Branch campus first student council president felt when he was elected. Even I couldn't believe it when Tita told me. Alright, it is what it is, I suppose. I'll just have to make use of this the best I can. Sunlight beamed into the student council room. The blonde-haired girl and two of her friends struggled with the new workload they were adjusting to. As Wren sat there, ears open to random talk and the occasional grumble, the thought crossed her mind. She had no end of real-world worries, the problem arising from rapid technological development, the society's next move, the ominous winds of change blustering over Calvard. But despite all of those, she wanted to enjoy her simple time here while she could. Let's say we get this work done so we can celebrate with a tea party, The arrival of spring was now a distant memory. Even if summer had yet to come, there was nothing particularly spectacular about this time. It was just another ordinary, beautifully bright afternoon. Beautifully bright, as in Wren Bright? Unconventional student, the end. Ooh, oh! There's another one, chat. Forward, sword in hand. I can't wait to see her in Daybreak. I knew she was in Daybreak, but I can't wait to see her now. September, year 1207 of the Septian Church. Ooh, so this happens before... Not before the end of this game, but before the other two things that we just saw. I cannot accept. I was not one to mince words. The hulking bear of a veteran bracer, Zin Vathek, could not hide his disappointment, puffing out his bottom lip with a sigh as he stood before me. I believe this is the last one. You're almost done? Yes, I hope so. Not again. You gotta resign yourself to the inevitable one of these days. I had been indebted to this man, who was as capable as he was kind since my first days in the guild. Truly, I didn't wish to be a source of vexation for him, but the wish alone was not enough. I have neither the experience nor the skill to be worthy of an A rank, so I cannot accept your recommendation. Bracers are assigned ranks based on their strength and achievements, with A rank being the highest, on paper at least. Its members are the very face of its beloved organization, and as such, ranks are a metaphorical badge of honor to be worn with pride. So how had I received multiple recommendations for the most prestigious ranks in 6 months? I spared no effort in working to hone my craft in the years I joined after school, and certainly I wouldn't classify myself as a doe-eyed newcomer, but to have my name among the greats of the guild, absolutely not. But after turning down my first recommendation, a second one had come in from the guild's headquarters in Le Mans. If you ask me, you got both in spades. Is there something else making you lead towards a no? Zin's awkward smile told me he had been pressured by headquarters to persuade me. I folded my arms. Setting aside whether you're overestimating me or not, which I believe you are, there is. I would very much like to not stand out any more than I already do. I've been getting offers to be a model, to star in films. It's been, frankly, exhausting, forcing them to give up. Now, what do you think would happen if I were to accept a promotion? I'd be neck deep in the same mess all over again. Okay, that makes sense, but sorry, you're a 1-2 punch in the beauty and bronze department. Trying to lay low is a lost cause. With the kinds of fans you're getting, maybe you should consider the silver screen after all. Who knows, you might walk away with an award from the film festival. Zin's laugh was hearty in contrast to my unamused frown. Much as I respected him, he could do with showing a little more decorum. That's not funny. I understand being in the public eye to some extent is inevitable, and I've accepted it, but I'm a bracer, not an entertainer. I wasn't trying to be funny, though. You gotta find a way to let off some steam, or you're gonna break when we need you to put together the most. Happens to the workaholics like you more often than you think. I didn't think I was pushing myself as much as he implied, but I also couldn't deny there was a nugget of truth to what he said. We were getting off topic. Just why is headquarters so desperate for me to become an A-rank bracer? I can't see the logic behind it. Well, you see, starting with what you know, the reparations from Erebonia have beefed up our economy this year. So all kinds of new investments are pouring in from across the continent. Now, I'm no economist, but people go where the money's at, and where people go, conflict follows. That's just how it is. I saw where he was going from there, electing to expand upon the rest myself. So now we have disputes between megacorporations and a stark increase in Jaeger activity. These are in addition to the known growth of private military companies and increased tensions between mafias. You got it. You think it's bad now? It's only going to get worse from here. That's why Le Mans wants to up security here while promoting its rising star, you. They see it as a good PR for the guild and are a deterrent to any potential threats that are thinking about stepping out of line. Perhaps I was more vaguely aware of their goal in using me than I wanted to admit. This didn't make hearing the answer any more satisfying. If they have you asking to pay me to play my part, then surely they've already asked you to play your part already. You've been recommended for S-rank, haven't you? S-rank, not S-break. If you know of a better deterrent to having an S-rank in Calvard, then I'd like to hear it. Zin scratched the back of his head awkwardly upon my statement. I've seen 3 people this week alone finish this game doing this daydream. Well, allow me to be the 3rd. I just don't think I'm up there with someone like Cassius Bright. S isn't even an official rank, and even if it was, just look at me. You think a guy like me is a picture-perfect advertisement for the guild? I think you have the skills, achievements, and build to be one, yes. What is happening, Matt the Shadow Man? How are you doing this evening? Kurt, quick response. Kurt? Alright, point made. I can't force you to take the recommendation, and I'm not about to be a hypocrite. Just let me know if you change your mind, okay? With that, the conversation came to an end, and the guild's bracers gathered to begin our routine meeting of delegating Open requests. I can read, I promise. You're enjoying Horizon? Perfect. Love to hear it. It'll be a while for me, but I'm looking forward to it. I've heard good things. This was how I preferred things. It was better to stay like this. There was a point when I wanted to be something more. I can no longer remember when that was. Sometime during my childhood it happened, I'm sure. I just recalled realizing how small the world truly was. So I prayed and longed to become someone I was not. It was around high school when I thought I became that someone. No rush, you're only expediting for the next entry otherwise. True. Going through at a reasonable pace. Those years were unforgettable. I'll never forget the unexpected reunion that was had there, nor the priceless treasure that I had gained. I truly thought I'd gotten closer to who I wanted to be. But in the end, it was just wishful thinking. My hand, once held, was now empty, and I was still a nobody. But I refused to stand still. I grew unrelenting in following my new path I chose for myself, ignoring my family's objections. My motivations have changed, however. I no longer possess that girlhood desire of becoming something more. Of becoming someone. I just needed to keep moving, however aimless that movement was. I think I know who this is? Well, aren't we looking gorgeous today? With a whimsical wink, a familiar bartender welcomed me to his establishment. He was a tall, affable man who lived by his own rules and never hesitated to lend a helping hand to others. He reminded me much of the Crossbell City branch's receptionist from the few times I visited for work. The place was nearly empty today. I sat down on the counter seat furthest from the door as he approached. I mean, there's only so many... Assuming that this is somebody from Cold Steel, there are only so many students that became bracers. By so many, I mean one. And from what I've read in this story, it matches up with Fee. I'm not 100% sure that it's Fee, because it might just be, like, someone else who went through similar experiences, but it very much matches up with Fee's story. The usual, sweetheart? That was a terrible voice for a bartender. I stopped by here after a hard day's work on occasion, and whenever I did, I always ordered coffee and a light snack. This was not a coffee and snacks kind of day. I want something with alcohol. Even beer will do. Not at all fazed by the vagueness of my order, he walked away and started preparing me a drink. It wasn't long before he returned and placed an elegant glass in front of me. I think this is a little more you than a beer. It is a beautiful cocktail composed of two colors. A clear blue that, like that of a priceless safrole, and a calming jade. No doubt he could tell how disquieted my heart was and was trying to soothe it in his own way. I thanked him inwardly before daring to broach my other reason for coming. Have you learned anything more about what I asked? Apart from being a skilled bartender, he was also a well-known informant. He was extremely well connected to the guild. To the guild, the press, and even to the criminal underworld. But he was very careful to never overstep his boundaries with that last one. Excuse me. Indeed, I found him to be a valuable source when needed. I wish I could say yes, but not even Dingo has any promising leads. Still, I think you've got your eyes on the right district. It's only a matter of time before they get smoked out. I see. Since the guild's investigation turned up nothing, I was hoping he would better point me in the right direction. But it seemed this was going to be a lot harder than I had hoped for. I'll probably come up with a better voice for him once I actually see his face and maybe even hear his voice in action. Things will work out. Just pace yourself and keep at it a little bit at a time. This also applies to that cocktail. It's a strong one, so don't drink it all at once. Yeah, it's already gone. Dang it, Fee! I tilted the glass delicately between my fingers as he stepped away, my mind continuing to wade through the case I was following. There had been a stark increase in illegal drugs on the market, not just any drugs either, but ones of the highly addictive, dangerous variety. Gnosis? Hayway, who effectively ruled over the criminal underworld in Calvard, ordinarily limited their proliferation in the market as part of their rules. Limiting the number of drugs was, of course, far from the ideal elimination of them, but none could deny that the syndicate's actions had brought some semblance of order to where chaos often reigned supreme. Yet the past few years had seen a worrying number of criminal groups rebelling against these carefully curated rules. One of these groups was surely behind the cage in the market. Change in the market, not a cage in the market, casting it. And all of this held a presumed connection to two missing people. The guild and police had been tasked with searching for two children below the age of 10, a boy and his younger sister. Hayway doing in Calvard what Ravash used to do in Crossbell. Correct. And what... Okay, Hayway's presence in Crossbell isn't major, but it is definitely felt. They simply left the house one day and had not been seen since. Evidence suggested they came from a perfectly ordinary family on good terms with one another, so the likelihood of them running away was slim. We mulled over the suspicion that they had been abducted for ransom early on, but not a single demand was following their disappearance, so it was quickly ruled out. Despite a healthy amount of manpower that was coming from both sides, neither the guild nor the police had yet to find them. That said, the search so far had not proved entirely fruitless. Their last known location was fortunately established, and it was, unfortunately, a popular site for illicit drug trade. The working theory from there became that the siblings had witnessed a transaction and were held captive by the criminal parties involved as a result. Calvert is a much bigger country after all, so the effects somewhere smaller like Crossbell was more keenly felt. Fair enough. If that held true, then the longer it took the parties to find them, the greater the danger their lives were in. The abductors wouldn't do anything right away. Murder was sure to leave trace evidence behind, but it was only a matter of time before they resorted to that or trafficking abroad to be rid of them. With each passing second, the odds of the children being returned unharmed were dropping to zero. At the same time, all of this was pure speculation on our part, based on a single established location. For all we knew, this had nothing to do with the criminal underworld at all. The potential dangers thrown around made inaction an agonizing task, but if there was no evidence to go on, action was impossible. We could forcibly arrest any suspicious people on sight and make them talk should we wish it, but that would be a direct violation of the Guild's code and its founding principles. The Bracers Guild always sought to be an ally of the people first and foremost, so resorting to criminal acts to obtain evidence was out of the question. If only the strict adherence to our code didn't stop us from being able to resolve so many crimes, thereby putting the people we swore to protect in danger. It was the ultimate impasse. As I found myself pondering on this impossible dilemma, the Bracers had placed themselves in, a familiar face came to mind. He was a childhood friend with blue-tinged, unkempt hair. Blue-haired man. Though we had lost contact with one another some years before, he one day returned to the city as suddenly as he had left it. Okay, so she is not, in fact, misremembering Reen's hair color somehow. Soon after standing up a particular profession that skirted the line of legality to a dangerous degree, the kind of profession that could easily involve himself in the affairs of many an unscrupulous individual, or so I believed. I like showing the limitations the Bracers has. The Sky Games showed mostly the positive to what they can do. That's fair. It is nice to see that they are not, in fact, just like perfect beings that can do whatever they feel like. Just what did that idiot think he was doing? He walked out of my life without warning and walked back in much the same. I'd spent so much time searching for him, I knew our reunion would be an awkward one based on how we parted, but for him to return after all that waiting, all that searching, and dive into something questionable, some questionable enterprise so different from my own was almost too much to bear. They are not above the law, Crimson, and it's true. It gave rise to many concerns as a bracer, and many more concerns as a friend. And the one that bothered me most was, why hadn't he come to see me? Did he have any idea how worried I was about him? How worried I am about him? Irritation building, I took a large gulp of my cocktail, but the alcohol only fanned the flames of anger burning in my heart. They burned brighter and brighter still, becoming a dazzling white that projected countless transient images of the past. Then, just as quickly as it had flared, my anger faded in an instant, replacing itself with a very different emotion altogether. Why did you leave me? The words slipped from my mouth without me realizing it, making me feel downright pitiful once they were said. If someone were to see me in this state. Still haven't moved on, I see. A familiar but unexpected voice called out to me, causing me to jump slightly from surprise. I quickly regained my composure. I just have a few choice words I'd like to say. My response feigned calmness as best I could. I couldn't help but think I had more than a few choice words, really, but following up with that would aid my annoyance in a way I would rather not further. Oh, I imagine you have more than a few. Right. Of course he would see right through me. The bespectacled man then sat down next to me, as though running into each other was no coincidence. He was another childhood friend of both myself and the one I was lamenting over, and someone who followed a remarkably different career path from either one of us. If it's still bothering you that much, then why not just go and see him? You already have his address by now, surely. How could I, with how much time has passed? As I mumbled my response meekly, I thought I could hear the man next to me chuckle. Well then, I suppose there's no need to rush things. With your lines of work, I'm sure your paths will naturally cross enough in due time. I didn't expect that kind of response. You make it sound so romantic. Lest you have forgotten, I don't struggle with expressing what's in my heart the way he does. Now, since we're here, how about a toast? I'll, make your next one non-alcoholic. And lest you have forgotten, I can handle liquor just fine, thank you very much. We then spent the rest of our time reminiscing about the past. It had been too long since we were able to just sit and talk like this. It wasn't that he and I had become estranged, but both of our jobs made it a trying task to meet even at the best of times. By the way, I heard you turned down becoming an A-rank bracer again. Of course that wouldn't escape CID's ears. The information itself wasn't confidential, but that he already knew something, however unofficial it was entirely typical of him. The Bracer Guild focused on protecting civilians, while the CID focused solely on the needs of the president in office. The groups were neither enemies nor allies, they simply had very different goals where work was concerned. I know it isn't my place to tell you to accept the offer, however... He paused before resuming, his tone becoming markedly more serious. The times we live in demand a new hero. That much is clear. I had no idea what a realist like him was trying to say by implying I was a hero. But before I could inquire further, he changed the subject that was likely what brought him to me in the first place. Now, if you don't mind, I have something that will be of interest to you regarding those missing children. My eyes widened from the unexpected change. He continued. We have identified the group that made that district their turf, as well as have compelling evidence of a crime taking place. You may proceed as you'd like in the cooperation with the police. I couldn't believe it. On a fine silver platter, he had given me just cause to act. And since the information came from the CID, there was no reason to doubt its veracity. I felt it. I was on the verge of rekindling my girlhood desires. All I had done now was follow was follow life where it was taking me. And yet here I found myself before a new path that could lead to that someone I once wanted to be. This deviation terrified me. What if it led to me losing someone again? What if it ended in more pain? My fear begged me to stay idle. I was a fragile human being at my core. I knew it well. It made me wish I was anything but. It inspired me to take up the sword and rebel against any whispers of weaknesses. Any whispers of weakness I played, I played the part admirably on the surface. But if I were forced to face cruel reality in the future, I wondered, would my heart be able to take it? As I sidestepped to the left, I shifted my center of gravity and unleashed a flurry of slashes against my first foe, using that momentum to thrust both myself and my blade toward my second. 2 low-ranking mobsters fell to the ground. They were members of a mafia I had been chasing, and right now I was in the thick of their den of operations. My friend gave the guild and police the excuse we needed to take a more direct stance against our targets. His information was vague, however, so we still had to discern their precise location on our own. I, Zin, and several other bracers had agreed that it would be best to split our forces and attack several locations in unison for this part of the mission. Based on what just transpired, it appeared my location was the lucky winner. There's the intruder! Hey, I've seen her before. She's from the paper. 2 more reinforcements arrived, but I was hardly going to give them the time to act. I raced forward, swinging my sword twice as I passed them, and they fell before they could even raise their weapons. Okay, I no longer think this is Fee. I advanced. Mobsters appeared in droves. Presumably, word of my arrival had already spread. There she is. She's that bracer that's been going a roundabout. Well, damn it. What if the immovable's here, too? Don't be chicken shit. It's one woman. We can take care of her. They then charged me in a mess. At least 10 of them, with more reinforcements on their way. From farther inside the building. Forcing my way through with how many they had in their numbers was risky. I knew the sensible thing to do would be to wait for the other bracers to show, but I also had to consider, what if my waiting afforded the Mafia the time to wield the children as hostages? Weighing the 2 options, I concluded that whatever reduced the chances of that happening was worth the cost. I needed to push on and settle this, now. Yes, clearly Asuna, the girl... Never mind. Besides, I believed I had nothing to fear from this pitiful group as they were. Were they seasoned combat veterans? They could have used their numerical advantage to implement complex formations and corner me, but they did no such thing. The amateurs. And they dared to believe they could held a candle to Heiwei's martial arts? In the face of one of my experience, their bloated size was more of a hindrance than a help. They wouldn't be able to utilize even half of their potential against me. I first had to position myself and them appropriately. No, SAO Asuna was actually, I initially misread that as Elisa. Or I initially thought of Elisa, and I'm like, yes, the girl with the bow. And then I realized, wait, no, that's not right. If I could ensure the gun-toting wielders among them were in each other's line of fire while rounding up the close-range fighters to a single spot, they would soon have bigger worries. Friendly fire. Their vulnerabilities would then spell my victory as I cut them down. 1 down, 2 down. The precious seconds after defeating a foe were the most advantageous. Just as a man had fallen, I was on to another before they had the time to adjust to my incoming blade. There's no pattern to who was next by design. I chose my targets with stunning erraticism, throwing them into complete disarray as more collapsed to the ground. 3 down, 4. I would go around them in a wide circle. I would move between them, while remaining ever aware of any surprises and assaults at my back. I waded through them till I encountered the ones farthest back. These ones never even considered I would be able to reach them. They were spread so carelessly. The men took up their guns with newly alert panic strewn across their faces, but their fate was already sealed. This bracer fighting like how I play the later games, I see. They were powerless as I closed the gap between us. 5, 6, 7. With over half their numbers down, the remaining mobsters were quickly losing their will to counter. Some attacked out of adrenaline-induced desperation, calculating their next moves so poorly that they fell into my long-sit trap and accidentally attacked themselves. At this point, the battle was as good as final. All I had to do was continue taking them down till I was the last one standing. There were smaller groups I encountered on my way through the building, but I was able to disable them with little effort. The path they opened up for me eventually led me to their leader. He was a middle-aged fellow, pacing restlessly around an unpleasant, gaudy room until I entered. He twitched in fear upon the very sight of me. "Why are you here? Where are my men?" Kissing the floors. I answered so calmly and consciously that he balked in disbelief. "That's impossible. I sweat my balls off to build this group from the ground up, and you're just saying a girl like you tore it all down just like that?" I ignored his crude language and drew closer. As I thrust my sword till I sat just between his eyes, he let out a squeal. Well, I'm no ordinary girl. I'm a bracer. And don't worry, I didn't kill them. They've only been knocked out or restrained. You'll be seeing them again soon in prison." I shot a darkened glare in his direction as the tip of my sword wandered towards his neck. "Now, I have some questions for you, and you will answer them." The man nodded empathetically, his whole body trembling in fear. Emphatically, that's the word. 2 children, a boy and a girl under 10 years old, disappeared last month. Your people abducted them, didn't they? Objection leading? He nodded. I knew it. Then where are they? What did you do to them? They're in a room farther inside. They're alive. At last, I could breathe a sigh of relief. My most fundamental objective was coming here could be fulfilled. Next, I needed to ask him more about this group. I thought you all seemed far too weak to be in charge of this district of the city. But after coming across your account book, everything fell into place. You're working on behalf of someone else, aren't you? He was so unsure of how to respond that he fell completely silent, but that alone gave me my answer. Who is it then? Tell me, is it A? I can't. He flinched in fear as I pressed him, resisting as though he genuinely couldn't say. Then, just as he opened his trembling lips to speak, I heard a strange thudding sound from outside the room. I stepped away from the man, my sword still firmly in hand. Crunching, squelching, splattering. More sounds, these more audible than the first. I didn't know what to make of them, but they made me feel an instinctive revulsion as they dragged on. They may have come accompanied by faint groans, but if they did, they faded just as soon as they silenced themselves. I remained on guard as I stepped out onto the hallway, ready to be attacked from any angle at any moment, and at the sight that greeted me defied all imagination. The mobsters I fought through the mere minutes before were now nothing more than distorted, mutilated piles of flesh and bone. Not just one or two, every single one of them, without exception, had been reduced to bloodied mounds. Some were without their heads, others had their organs ripped from their abdomens. There were those with their skulls caved in and leaking pulverized brain matter, or the ones with their heads pulled and squeezed. Very gruesome, indeed. Each corpse was different, each corpse was unbearable to look at. The plain hallway I traversed with all due speed was now covered in sticky, slimy red. Who could have done something like this? The sight was so awful that my free hands, now clenched, shook from disgust. When was it ever necessary to go this far? What could anyone have to gain from this? Wait. No! I realized I had just made a very careless mistake and turned and hurried back into the room I was just in. I was too late. The Mafia's leader was floating in the air in the center of the room as though some unknown force was holding him up by his chest. A monstrous sword pierced through his chest. A single streak of blood dripped from his unspeaking mouth. There was no room to believe he was anything but dead. Like all the others in the hallway, he didn't even have a time to scream before his life was taken. Who are you? I barked at the center of the room, trying to drown out my instinctive fear with anger. At glance, only the corpse and I were present. But if I strained my eyes, I could also see the faint contours of another distorting the space around them. It must have been some form of active camouflage. I would have thought that it a basic courtesy to give your name before asking another's, charming ace of the Bracer Guild. It was a man's voice that projected true arrogance, as though he were above all others as a matter of course. I instinctively readied myself for battle in response, but my actions seemed not to faze him in the slightest. No need to be spoiling for the fight. I am simply here to take out the trash, after they were careless enough to leave a trail for the CID to follow. Was I really talking to a fellow human being? How could he speak of such gruesome murders in those terms? Are you a business partner of theirs? No, you must be from the group above them. Very good. He then swung his blade to the side and tossed the corpse off of it. Corpse off to the side with all the respect of a used cigarette. How could you treat people you worked with like this? People? Have you your ears? I said nothing about taking out a person, only trash. The same applies to the garbage piling up in the hallway. They have always been so, even before they stopped breathing. It was clear that communicating with someone of his nature was impossible. I dismissed calm reason for an intense, all-consuming anger so great that my entire body couldn't stop trembling. You monster! Before I knew it, I had sprung into action, pouting every drop of my strength into my blade to launch a swift, unavoidable strike. But he repelled it with one vertical swing of his own. This one exchange was enough to tell me that his strength was a league above mine. He parried my blow at the most perfect instant, canceling out the force of my attack with so little effort that it barely scratched the surface of what he was capable of. The act of camouflage did nothing to hide the monstrous nature of his cruciform sword either. Its design combined silver and black in an unholy fusion of darkness and light, as if chaos itself dwelled within its very blade. This was no common weapon. Even if I continued to give it my all, my odds of winning against him were extremely slim. But at the same time, my instincts were screaming at me that I could not allow him to leave. I charged again. If attacking him from the front wasn't going to work, then I would have to go for his side. He blocked that attack with just as little effort. But I wasn't done. I refused to stop slashing a third time. I refused to stop moving, slashing a third time, with even more speed than the first two. I showered him in a flurry of them, each one faster than the last. When I finally reached my physical limit, I darted in a new direction, attacking him from behind. I put my very soul into one overwhelming attack, aimed directly at his rear, which I could only just make out through the camouflage distortion. I got him. However, the second I became sure that victory was within my grasp, his cruciform blade carved a great arc through the air in a ferocious spinning slash. I was able to instantly defend myself against the blow, but the force of it sent me flying backwards. I was fortunate enough to not have sustained a direct hit, but my body shook from now being able to fully cancel out its massive weight. Still, I forced myself back up to my feet and glared at his form. The difference between us was night and day. It felt as though he could manipulate the very flow of battle, much like a master of the martial arts, who understood the true nature of all things. He paid no mind to my pitiful attempt at bravado. He gave a short laugh before speaking. Impressive. You put up more of a fight than the rumors had led me to believe. What's your goal? What are you trying to do with all your strength? I expected him to reject or ignore me, so I was taken aback when he paused for a sincere moment of thought before answering. An interesting question. I suppose to instill fear. Fear? I almost doubted my ears. Fear is at the heart of all we know. Domination and servitude, order. Domination and servitude, order, harmony, and production. All of it exists because of fear. That is why I seek to instill fear in its purest form, much like the retributive tower that appeared in Crossbell half a year ago. Such a pity that it fell. There was such pleasure in his words that it made it easy to imagine the expression on his veiled face. As insane as what he was saying sounded to me, I knew he meant every word of it. You really are a monster. Continue your fruitless attempts to stop me, and you'll understand what I mean in due time. He lowered his blade. As a parting gift for assisting me in my house-cleaning efforts, I will let you and those children go. Keep that far too pristine blade sharp for our next meeting, Bracer. With that, he turned to leave. Wait! Just as I extended my hand, the ground below him emitted a bright glow. By the time the glow had faded, he was gone. Ooh, is he from the Society, chat? That's the Society's teleportation effects, right? He had likely used the same teleportation spell that certain other criminal organizations were known to rely on. Like, not Organization 13, the Society, Ouroboros, that's the one I'm thinking of. His departure also released all the strength I had left in me. Not from relief, but from the exact opposite. I was so overwhelmed with frustration that I let him leave, so afraid of what he might go on to do because I couldn't stop him that I lost the strength to even stand. Play trails to find out. God damn it, you're right. Of course, this is just who I've always been. Haven't changed one bit since the day you left me. Still the same powerless girl I was back then. My work here wasn't finished yet. I walked to the next room. I opened the door and was greeted by what appeared to be an old storage space. There, across the hall, I found who I was searching for. The brother and sister pair were crouched against the wall, the boy trembling on the floor, and his sister stood close by. It's okay, I'm here to help you. I kept my tone as gentle and reassuring as I was able. The girl smiled while her older brother continued to hide his face. I slowly walked towards them, careful not to make any sudden movements, but as I did, the boy shook his head vigorously, his whole body trembling more the closer I got, as though he were telling me to stay away. The answer from that man flashed in my mind. Fear is at the heart of all we know. These poor children were very much in fear's clutches. No matter how gradual I was in closing the distance between myself and the boy, trying my best not to provoke him, his body language showed he continued to reject me. We were now within arm's length of one another. His shaking grew more violent, and though he opened his mouth to speak, his voice refused to come out. It's all right. I smiled a most comforting smile. After that, I reached out behind me and grasped a blade of the knife that was being thrust toward me. I turned swiftly, my fingers never letting go, and found the one gripping the hilt to be none other than the sister. She had tiptoed around my back while I was kneeling to meet her brother and tried to stab me from behind. She was a bit startled by my halting her attack, but otherwise she stared blankly forward, emotion on her face nowhere to be seen. I suppose he was right about fear. It controls everything we do. You must have been through something terrifying if it made you resort to this. No doubt they were now conditioned by fear to attack anyone who came to their rescue. I paid no mind to the blood from my bare hand slowly dripping onto the floor. The cut from the knife was nothing compared to everything else in the moment. My first priority was to rescue that girl that I meant no harm. Reassure the girl that I meant no harm. But we humans are capable of more than giving in to that fear. We can fight it with courage. We can fight it. With courage, we can fight it. So messed up that the kids this age are so scared they were terrified. Yeah, absolutely. Terrified of anyone who came in to help them. Exactly. Your brother was doing just that now. He may have been gripped by fear, but he still fought his hardest through his actions to alert me of the danger his sister posed. Even if it took all he had, he wanted to keep me safe and able to keep her from committing an irreversible, regrettable act. It was thanks to him that I noticed what she was trying to do. You don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm a bracer. I'll keep you safe. I took the girl into my arms. You're a bracer? Yeah, it could be worse. God damn it, Matt. No. Please no. Even her voice was devoid of emotion. That's right. I'm here to help you. Oh. I think I've seen you in a magazine before. Something Blade, I think. That's right. The nickname is a little embarrassing, but I'd be happy if you remembered it. That way, as long as you hear it, you'll know I'm here to keep you out of harm's way. I tightened my grip around her as if to stop anything more from hurting her and surrounded her heart with my warmth. It really will be okay, I promise. I noticed her eyes twitch just slightly, and before long, her eyes filled with tears. Soon she began to sniffle, at first a small one here and there, till they gradually grew more pronounced, eventually turning into uncontrollable sobs. She had finally been liberated from her fear. As for me, I had stayed my course. I was too afraid to deviate from my current patch. Still, I had chosen this path with pride in my heart. I didn't think it right to turn my back now. Ugh. But I wasn't going to let it be an aimless journey from now on either. Thank you for the Hydrate Frost. Brand new song. I'm digging it. And so, it was another day in the Edith branch of Calvard's guild. Sounds like that mafia was trying to copy what that other organization of assassins managed to pull off. I was discussing the recent case with Zen. Siblings had indeed been abducted because they witnessed an illegal transaction. Does this song appear in Daybreak? I'm guessing that it will somewhere. It has to, right? I don't know if it has to, but it probably will. The mafia involved then thought to mimic a group of assassins known for raising children with the intention of turning them into professional killers. That's Swin and Nadia, chat. Liking the saxophone. Ooh. Their attempts, thankfully, proved as unsuccessful as their attempts to remain covert in selling drugs. The CID found them, and whoever they were working for purged them. A hell of a way to go. Oh, if I hadn't been so incompetent, maybe they wouldn't have been purged at all. Don't beat yourself up about it. Guild's priority is to keep civilians safe, not criminals. I don't want to say they deserved it for getting involved in organized crime, but it is what it is. Try putting that frustration you're feeling into more personal growth instead of letting it eat you alive. I was told that while the siblings were going to need psychological counseling for some time, they were fully expected to recover and go back to their everyday lives. My meeting with them had triggered something inside of me. I came to realize that something needed to change. I had to take some kind of step forward. Even if it ended in me falling to the floor in some dramatic fashion, excuse me, I just need to pick myself back up again. With that in mind, I accepted my multiple recommendations. Yeah! The times we live in demand a new hero. Doing so made me think of what my childhood friend said to me. I didn't believe I had what it took to be a hero. But if I could even be just a brief one able to give people hope and banish the darkness ahead, that was reason enough to keep on going. Maybe that could make me somebody enough to fight alongside the real hero once they came to light. Well, shall we get down to business? Are we defeating the Huns again, chat? Zin turned to face me, his classic broad grin even broader than usual. It'll be a while before the official paperwork arrives from the headquarters, but I'm sure they won't mind me speeding up this part of the process with how much they wanted this. The Republic now has a bracer who reached A rank at the same age as the Empire's Purple Lightning. Congrats on your promotion, Elaine Auclair, Beauty's Blade. That's her name, Elaine. Forward, sword in hand. The end. And soon, all three of their paths will meet up with each other. Met my first Daybreak character. Ooh, was that the Grandmaster? Suspension of causality, recording engine activity confirmed. Force connection to Astrolink severed. The whirlpool of causality engulfing Erebos and the fated land has at last been unraveled. True, Matt. I did meet Dingo before Elaine. Though the bell ringing in the end of days has yet to be silenced. Honestly, I thought it was Fee at first. You, children of Zemuria, have earned your moment of peace until the time comes to face the final hour. Until you, with hope and fear in your hearts, must walk new trails. But yeah, no, the backstory for the first bit-ish reminded me of Fee's a lot. And I know that Fee appears in Daybreak. And she's a bracer. So I'm like, okay, high schooler that
Sealing
becomes a bracer.
Unsealable.
Who else could it be but Fee? Apparently it's not Fee. I like it. I like the backstory. It is 12:30 and I need to be awake so I can go to work at 11 tomorrow. So unfortunately, much to DJ's chagrin,
browsing interface.
I won't be watching the rest of these on stream. I will be watching them maybe like one at a time on my own. But I'm not going to be watching the rest of these here on stream, sadly. That all said, let's go look for a raid. I am ready for Daybreak now. Well, more ready than I already was. I've been ready for Daybreak for like a little bit now. The bright one is great. I can't wait to see it. But I can't right now. Yeah. Crimson, we've already discussed this. I met Dingo first. Oh, yeah, the princess. The nameless princess. Speaking of Daybreak, Rai is currently playing Daybreak. I'm not going to be raiding into them on account of I do not wish to be spoiled. For obvious reasons. Let's see here. The princess you know nothing about. Is Taylor finally getting close to beating Marluxia? I doubt it. Who knows, maybe, but I've rated her several times already. Let's give somebody else a chance. Who is playing? Oh, she already beat him? Okay. Who's playing the original Trails in the Sky? Ooh. Sure. I know nothing about this dude. Let's go raid Jocko Beats. He's playing through Trails in the Sky FC. Not the remake, the original. This will be fun. As always, you can use these two messages to go and show our new friend some love. I'm going to be going to bed soon, though. You all have fun watching Jaco. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm hoping that I'm at least somewhat close. Jaco beats with a Z. I'll see you tomorrow for the start of Daybreak. Bye, chat! Hope I remember everything. My memory sucks. I will remember nothing. I'm gonna be like, Ren, who's that? New character. Okay, maybe it won't be that bad. Anywho, bye, chat!